Ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, friends, good morning to all of you. Sorry, good afternoon, I think now. So good afternoon to all of you. Thanking Elets for inviting me over here to give this special session on leveraging experiential learning of global best practices for urban transformation. I would also like to thank Amit Khatriji, the Municipal Commissioner, Gurugram Municipal Corporation, for inviting me over here. So can I start? Yeah, sure. We begin with this debate of whether urbanization is really a boon or a bane. So it's a very, it's a topic that's been debated and we're grappling with this reality today. The attempt that I would be making through this presentation is to sensitize the development authorities and the people over here, experts and policymakers, to the challenges of urbanization and also how we could convert a bane into a boon. So there's no story without a history. So we begin by looking at the inception of urbanization. As we all know, in the 50s, we were just 30% urban. And by 2030, we are tipped to become 60% urban and 30% rural. A large part of the story is actually being played out by the developing regions and not the developed regions. The developed regions, the growth has actually saturated and plateaued. So there's no more that they contribute to the urbanization story. As we all know, it is Southeast Asia, East Asia and Pacific, and the South Asia, which is actually contributing to this urbanization story. And South Asia particularly, we would be having almost 250 million people by 2030. That is the extent or the gamut of urbanization that we need to grapple with in South Asia. So has this been really a boon in South Asia or has it been a bane? So let's look at that. It's been a boon to a large extent. They've been able to successfully leverage on the positive effects of urbanization, and the GDP has actually grown per capita from $2,500 to around $4,000 between 2000 to 2012 with an annual growth rate of almost 4%. And absolute poverty is actually reduced from 1 in 2 to 1 in 3 during the same period. So to that extent, it's been a boon as far as the economy is concerned, as far as prosperity of certain sections of people is concerned. But if you look at, if you dive deeper, has it really contributed? Or has it really been a boon? Have they really been able to leverage the positive effects of urbanization? But if you look at the contribution to the global population, it's around 14%, but the contribution to the global GDP is just 8%. When you compare with East Asia, they contribute to almost 30% of the global GDP. So South Asia is just a little bit more than Sub-Saharan Africa in terms of the contribution to the global GDP. So where has it gone wrong? So as per a World Bank Group report on South Asia's urbanization, they classify the urbanization story to be messy and hidden. So by messy, we mean the slums and the squalor settlements and the inadequate basic services and infrastructure. That is the manifestations of messy urbanization. Like we have the figures in South Asia, that's almost 130 million people residing in slums and the need of almost 203 million units by 2050 to cater to the housing need. So hidden urbanization, what do we mean? What do we really mean by hidden urbanization? It's the sprawl. If you look at the same report has actually analyzed the growth of around 12 Indian cities, and we've seen that the city has actually been growing beyond the administrative boundaries. It's been growing outward rather than upward. And if you look at the sprawl, it's basically low density sprawl that's being witnessed across India and across many South Asian cities. If you look at the density of Delhi, it's around 9,000 persons per square kilometers, whereas Gurugram is just 1,200 persons per square kilometer. So we're actually dealing with low density sprawl here. And much of the sprawl is actually not recorded in the statistics per se, because much of it is hidden growth. So that's what they call by hidden aspects of urbanization, the bane of urbanization. One of the bane is hidden urbanization. So if you look world over, cities that have grown upwards are actually most livable and most prosperous. For example, Singapore, New York, London, and Paris are known to be the most livable cities in the world. These cities have actually tackled the effects of congestion and the congestion costs optimally by providing for basic services and infrastructure. So if you look at the growth, in India's urbanization story as well. Now we've looked at South Asia, we've looked at the world, we've looked at South Asia. Let's come to India. India's urbanization is also largely messy and hidden, as we all would agree. What is the problem statement per se? If we were to define the problem statement of urbanization today, we have more than 100 million slum dwellers, locked and underutilized land, distortions in land markets leading to outpricing of the majority, lack of effective and appropriate land policies. So this is the fourfold nature of the problem that we're dealing with in urbanization today. So if you look at the housing shortage, we all are talking about housing for all by 2022. So what are we really talking about when we say housing for all? We actually have a glut in the market as far as housing supply is concerned. The number of houses will actually go up beyond the number of households by 2022. So the shortage is actually lying in the slums and the squalor settlements. It is the congested houses which we need to tackle in order to fulfill this dream of housing for all. So if you look at the two reports of the Ministry of Housing between 2007-12 and 2012-17, if you look at the pie there, it's actually the congested housing which has actually increased in the two plan periods, whereas the rest of the rest of the numbers have actually reduced. So the actual challenge lies in tackling the congested housing, which is actually slums and squalor settlements. So if we deal with our slums, then we've actually got the story right. So if you look at land, as per a town and country planning estimates, we actually have about 44 lakh hectares of land available, whereas the land required to cater to the housing need is only 2 lakh hectares. So we do have 44 lakh hectares of land in our country. So what is the problem? Land is everywhere, but not an inch to spare. So the problem actually lies in the underutilized government-owned lands, vacant land, and the agricultural land, which is trapped within our cities. More than 50% of these are state-owned lands, and 15% of this prime land is occupied by slums. So now we come to Gurugram. So we say that, this is one of the iconic satellite towns of India, satellite cities in India. But Gurugram also witnesses these aspects of messy and hidden urbanization. These are some snapshots which are taken real time by the Sushant School of Planning and Development, my colleague there. So the top left is the slums in Nirvana country area, which you see there, and then the issues of waterlogging and infrastructure constraints that Gurugram faces today. So all is not well here as well. So if you look at the Boon, it's a greenfield development, higher FSI, high private participation in development, transit-oriented, examples of good TOD development in Gurugram as well. And signature buildings, as Sir had just said in the last forum. But if you look at the Bane, with the high pressures in infrastructure, poor implementation of the master plan, lack of attention to public good, and slums and squatter settlements, these are the challenges that the city faces today. So after having looked at South Asia, India, and Gurugram, now let's look at some of the policy solutions that has been practiced world over to effectively tackle these challenges of messy and hidden urbanization, so that we can replicate some of these policy solutions in our country too. TOD and mixed-use zoning is one best practice that has been adopted successfully across Latin America and other developing regions to tackle the challenges of urbanization, land banking, land pooling, and slum upgradation. So when you look at TOD, Singapore is a very good example of transit-oriented development. In 1991, they had planned their country in a way that it was almost like a pearls on a string model, with several decentralized urban nodes following the mass rapid transit corridors. And all of these nodes are high-density developments with self-contained townships, integrated by the metro rail. And these are actual file shots taken by me in Singapore. Queenstown and Clementi Station area, these are one of the best examples of TOD there. In the left side, the Clementi Station actually has 5 neighborhoods interconnected by a town bus shuttle. So this is the kind of transit-oriented, seamless transit-oriented development that has been implemented in Singapore successfully across the city, country, state, or city-state as they call it. So Gurugram has also has isolated examples of TOD, like you see the MGF Mall metro station, which actually seamlessly goes into the mall and to the neighborhood area. So this is one isolated example, a good example of a TOD in Gurugram. But if you look at when you construct metro corridors through brownfield cities, like this is a file shot taken in Chennai 2 years back when the metro was under construction. So the metro corridor actually goes through residential areas of the city. So how do we actually implement TOD here? One of the solutions is to increase the FSI in these neighborhoods so that we can actually get effective transit-oriented neighborhoods over here and capitalize on the metro corridors that are being implemented through brownfield cities. We could also have differential FARs following various metro corridors and transport corridors in a city. That's another solution, that policy solution. Then land value capture instruments. These are very powerful instruments which have been successfully tried in Latin America and other countries, but unfortunately India, we have not been able to gain success very much. TDR has been successfully implemented in Mumbai, but has not been able to, we haven't been able to replicate this in various other cities. Betterment contributions is a very powerful tool again, which actually capitalizes on the increase in land value by development, and which just doesn't go to the hands of a few private landowners, but it's distributed to the public. So betterment contributions is known to have funded almost 45% of public works in Latin American cities. CEPACs, or certificates of additional development potential, these are also bonds that are floated by municipalities to capitalize on the gains in development. Even just a small urban to rural conversion is known to increase land value by almost 400 times. So you could really capture them by issuing such bonds. So I'm sure Municipal Corporation of Gurugram, I don't know how far you are ahead, sir, in terms of bonds, but you could also look at issuing such development bonds to increase the revenues of your, sure, thanks. So we have started the stories, so we can go way ahead by looking at some of the best practices world over as well. Land banking is another important, another useful tool where it has been successfully again tried in Latin American cities where land is actually purchased, cheap agricultural land is purchased in periphery of cities, and in collaboration with private developers, they construct affordable housing in the city peripheries. Land pooling, again, has been successfully implemented and practiced now by DDA. And DDA has received almost 4,200 applications for almost 4,000 hectares of land as of August 2019 through their online registration portal. But some of the fallacies or the myths, some of the flaws of policy is about constructing houses in peripheries without actually providing for infrastructure and basic services. When we go ahead by constructing houses, when we get cheap agricultural land and then think that the infrastructure and the basic services would follow, that's a big flaw in implementation. For example, under the JNNURM, we constructed more than 1 million houses, but 25% of them are vacant today. A similar situation was there in Mexico, where they constructed houses in city peripheries, and now they have to face with the reality of ghost towns. So slum upgradation is a very effective policy solution which needs to be implemented effectively in India, which is still not being implemented due to various issues of political will, land values, land tenure rights, etc. It's been successfully implemented in Africa with various policy, innovative policies embedded through cross-subsidy, community contribution, skilled workers from the community, group titles and customary land, etc. We also have a very effective slum improvement strategy which has been designed as part of the Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, which I was part of the policy formulation in this program, wherein we actually told cities to scientifically map their slums across the city and then involve the community in redesigning their slums and come up with very scientific slum redevelopment options by looking at which slums are tenable and non-tenable, etc. And slum redevelopment is not just about tackling the existing slums, it's also about the preventive strategies so that we prevent slums from forming in future again, which involves a lot of projections of population, looking at tweaking policies and facilitating, designing facilitating policies so that housing construction improves and improving the access to finance for the urban poor. The National Urban Mission is another very good initiative of the Government of India, which actually talks about making peri-urban areas which are administratively rural and making them self-contained by provision of infrastructure, critical infrastructure gaps through grants from the government. So under this mission, which I had the opportunity to formulate and implement for 3 years, under this mission, we are actually developing 300 clusters called urban clusters across the country. So this would go a long way in actually reducing distress migration from peri-urban and rural areas to urban areas. So in conclusion, when we've looked at the challenges globally in South Asia, in India, the banes of urbanization, and how do we tackle them through certain policy solutions. And in conclusion, the key strategies are customized solutions balancing both congestion and urban sprawl, infrastructure and services to keep pace with the urban growth, invest in intracity linkages between large and secondary cities and towns, enforcement of spatial tools and master plan through a carrot and stick approach. Now, this is extremely important, enforcement of the master plan and the urban planning tools. There's no dearth of urban planning tools today, but it's just the enforcement which is lacking in India, which has been the story for the last 25, 30 years, when it's enforcement, enforcement, and enforcement. Of course, then apart from that, last but not the least, is to empower and strengthen our urban local bodies, technically and financially. So if we get some of these key strategies right, I think we can really look at making our urbanization a boon and rather than a bane. Thank you very much.